Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Eagles Latest on Fan Arch. I'm your host, Blake McQueary, and we are just one day out from the Eagles' season opener against the Dallas Cowboys. They start off 1-0 in their quest to another Lombardi trophy. They knocked off the Dallas Cowboys last night, 24-20, in a huge in-division win, a rivalry win, obviously, for the Eagles. We have a lot to talk about from that game. So without further ado, let's get right to kickoff doom. I don't know if you guys saw kickoff. I'm sure everybody seen kickoff. We're going to get into the crazy news later on. First, we're going to give just a shout out, our condolences to Ben Van Sumeren. He went down with a knee injury on the opening kickoff. Now, that was a big blow just to open the game for the Eagles. That's not the best start for the Eagles. He was the only fullback rostered for the Eagles. Now, what do you do from there? You go and search for another fullback, or my idea, A.J. Dillon. I think that's not a bad idea. A.J. Dillon obviously has the size to fill in at fullback. I think they are comfortable enough to just rock with A.J. Dillon. Obviously, Van Sumeren, it doesn't look too promising for him. That was a non-contact injury. Those are not great. So I think they could go get another fullback, but you have A.J. Dillon there. Obviously, they're not using him much as we seen last night at running back, so why not put him at fullback? That is just first. Now, right after that happened, actually during the injury timeout to Van Sumeren's knee injury, Jaylen Carter, during that intermission, Carter and Dak Prescott, they were exchanging words, and Carter gets flagged for an unsportsmanlike conduct. So now Philly fans are thinking, okay, you just talk some cash to Prescott, you get moved up 15 yards, get this stop. Yeah, that's not how it went. They replay it. Carter literally spit on Prescott. Now, there were some developments as we got new camera angles throughout the game. Shades of the Seinfeld show. There had to have been a second spitter, and oh, there was. Prescott actually spit first and aimed it at Carter, but he was just far away enough that it hit the ground, learning that I won't lie, I would have spit too. Like, I'm not going to lie. I would have spit back too. 100%. I would have spit back. Prescott played devil's advocate there, okay? There's no doubt about it. He's a smart man, though. Carter took the bait that Prescott gave him, spit back, it landed on Prescott. He was close enough. They were basically eye to eye. In that situation, obviously, Jaylen Carter, you have to be smarter than that. You cannot do that for so many reasons. So many reasons you cannot do that. I mean, at first, it's like, how do you not think you're face-to-face? The spit's obviously going to land on Dak Prescott. Like, there's no doubt about it. And then you think, again, Carter is arguably the best defensive player that the Eagles have. Like, he is the key to this entire Eagles defense. And the result there was clear. He makes that defensive line so much better. He is an elite defensive line he is, not only is he an elite defensive lineman, an elite defensive line helps out your secondary. If you watched the game last night, we're going to get into that obviously next. You see it on the ticker. The secondary was an issue. Without Carter, their defensive line was not up to par to help that secondary out. Eagles defensive tackles, Morrow, Ojomo, and Jordan Davis, they barely left the field in the first half. Ojomo played 29 of 30 snaps. Davis played 26 of 30. The Eagles have never had two defensive tackles play 85% plus of snaps in a game since 2016. That is according to Next Gen Stats. That is insane. Obviously, it was a huge loss to Jaylen Carter, a huge loss to the Eagles defense. The results were there all game long. Especially literally not even an offensive play snap has been snapped. No one snapped. Only kickoff has happened. We are in an injury timeout, and this goes on. As an insanely crucial loss. Now, where does it go from there? Does Carter get suspended much more? Obviously, I think the NFL is going to look into it. I think they are going to obviously replay the situation, the scenario. I think they're going to see that Dak Prescott spit first. I think he is actually going to get himself a fine, not a suspension, but a fine. Carter, on the other hand, obviously was kicked out of the game, didn't play a snap. Does he get suspended? I don't know. I don't think he should get suspended for any more games. I think just being disqualified from the season opener was enough. But you're Jaylen Carter, you cannot do that. Shout out to Big Dom also. Big Dom, obviously, talking to him leaving the field, if you've seen that. Big Dom is just huge asset to this team, huge asset. But Jaylen Carter, you can't do that. Now, we're going to move on to the secondary. Kind of, I guess, the impact to Jaylen Carter's spit. The secondary struggled. I'm going to say the secondary sucked. They were not good. Dak Prescott looked like a top 5 quarterback in the league in that first half. He was 7 for 11 for 98 passing yards with a 117.7 QBR in the first half. He went on to finish the game 21 to 34 with 188 passing yards. So he slowed down a little bit in the second half, got a little bit better. A few things that point out to me were that those last few drives defensively for the Eagles were very good. The last drive, not so much. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. CeeDee Lamb, feasting against Adoree Jackson. Absolutely eating against Adoree Jackson. In the first half, CeeDee Lamb, 3 receptions for 76 yards. Jackson was not good. I remember talking last episode, I asked the question, am I crazy for thinking that Adoree Jackson can slow? I said Pickens, okay? To my defense, I said Pickens. I didn't say Jackson. I said Pickens. Obviously, on CeeDee Lamb, it wasn't there. It wasn't there. I think after last night's game, you go and you trade for a corner. I think you do it. I think you do it. I talked about it last episode. Greg Newsome II. I think that is in Howie Roseman's future, is to go and trade for another corner. CeeDee Lamb, he went on to finish with 7 catches for 110 yards. Dallas was smart. I talked about it last episode. Obviously, if CeeDee Lamb was going to be primarily in the slot, Cooper DeJean was going to pick him up most of the game if he was going to primarily be in the slot. Dallas did not put him in the slot. Like, I seen CeeDee Lamb in the slot maybe 3 times. I don't know. They were smart. They knew exactly what to do, and that was to not put CeeDee Lamb in the slot because Cooper DeJean was on whoever is in the slot. Quinyon Mitchell, he even struggled a little bit. He got flagged for pass interference on George Pickens that resulted in a Javonte Williams touchdown. He almost got flagged for another pass interference at the end of the first half on Pickens again in the back of the end zone. That one was wishy-washy. I think the ball was a little bit uncatchable, so he got away with it, got bailed out a little bit. He would end up making up for it in the third quarter. He recovered a Miles Sanders fumble. That obviously was right before the weather delay. That was huge. Dallas was getting ready to score again. And the momentum was with them fully. That gave the Eagles all the momentum. Unfortunately, it didn't matter. The weather stopped the game for about an hour. Momentum cancels out at that point. So that was your starting corners. Now, Vic Fangio, he did put Jacorian Bennett in for a little bit. We got to see a little bit of Bennett. I talked about it last episode in terms of Jackson, how he played. If he was going to be struggling midway through the game, don't be surprised if you see Bennett. We seen Bennett. I think it was the last drive of the first half. He replaced Jackson. Now, he did get flagged for a pass interference call. Although Bennett was flagged, though, I don't understand why you put Jackson back in for the second half. I don't understand it. It's like Bennett went in, he got flagged on his first call, or his first play, my apologies, and then they were just like, no, we're going to put Jackson back in. I don't understand that. I think what we seen from Jackson in the first half was just enough to just not see Jackson again. Absolutely not. I don't understand why they put Jackson back in the game, but they did. So, yeah, moving forward, what do you see from corners? I think you see a trade. Obviously, that is in the future. Greg Newsome is a guy that I talked about. Jacksonville has a couple guys that I've talked about that would be tremendous suitors for the Eagles. I think that's where you go. But overall, it was a tough game for the secondary, even tougher for Adoree Jackson. Moving on to Jaylen and Saquon, the two stars of the show in Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley, I mean, are we surprised? Let's start with Hurts. 9 for 11 for 93 passing yards, 6 carries for 48 rushing yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns in the first half. That first half by Jalen Hurts was absolutely tremendous. Hurts made Dallas's defense look silly all first half long. The Cowboys defense, they played zone coverage on all 17 pass plays in the first half, blitzed 0 times. They generated only 3 pressures and forced 0 sacks. Hurts scrambled to run 6 times for 48 yards and 2 scores on those 17 pass plays. He was making them look silly. They had no spy at all in the first half to contain him, and he just knew it. He knew it. Hurts would go on to finish the game 19 for 23 for 152 passing yards and 94.2 QBR. He finished the game on the ground for 14 carries, 62 yards. Obviously, the 2 scores that I mentioned. His composure in the pocket and his ability to scramble when needed was off the charts. I've said it before. He is my projected MVP this season. He looked exactly that. Last episode, I mentioned we are going to see a different Jalen Hurts this year. Obviously, a guy who has been disrespected this offseason, a game manager, things like that. He shut that down today, okay, or last night. He shut that down, absolutely shut that down. I think this is the year we're going to see Hurts. He's going to make plays for this offense. He is going to extend games for this team. I think Jalen Hurts is out for heads, flat out. He's out for heads. One thing that pointed out to me with Jalen Hurts at the end of the game, 3rd and 3, 142 left to go, and the Eagles go empty set. Hurts drops back, scampers up the middle for a first down, puts the Cowboys to rest. That is what you want to see from your franchise quarterback. That is what you want to see from Jalen Hurts. I know the passing game wasn't up to par tonight. Not what you really want to see improvement-wise, because you look at it from last year and what you've seen last night, and it wasn't much of an improvement. We're going to get into that in just a little bit, but I want to point out another thing. Last year in the season opener, you remember, it was the offense that struggled, and it was the defense that kept them in it. This year, it was the complete opposite. Hurts single-handedly kept that in that game last night. Absolutely, 100%. Saquon was Saquon. Saquon did what he needed to do. Saquon was there when they needed him to be. 10 carries for 49 yards and 1 touchdown in the first half. What I seen from Saquon last night, nothing surprised me. He was extending plays with his feet, with his swiftness. He was lowering his shoulder into defenders, things like that. He finished the game with 18 carries, 16 rushing yards. That is something that I have talked about in terms of Saquon's availability and his involvement in the offense this year, is you want to limit the amount of times he's touching the ball. Did they do that last night? Not a ton. Did they limit his capability? I wouldn't say capability, but did they limit the amount of times he's shouldering that offense? Absolutely they did. For sure, 100%. I think Jalen Hurts, obviously, the amount of times he ran the ball, took the load off of Saquon, just way more than what we've seen last season. But overall, Jalen Hurts, stellar. Absolutely stellar. Now, we're going to go to a couple pros and cons from last night's game. First pro, Zach Bond and Jahad Campbell. I mentioned Bond and Campbell. They are the best linebacker duo in the NFL, hands down. I've seen enough to call it. A few episodes ago, I mentioned that this linebacker duo can be the best in the NFL. The linebacker room can be the best in the NFL. After last night, they're absolutely the best in the NFL. Put it to rest. Anybody else up against Bond and Campbell, I am taking Bond and Campbell 100%. Bond finished the night with 9 tackles, 1 pass deflection. He was absolutely tremendous for this defense. Dallas tried to test both of them down the middle, and both were not going. Bond had possibly the game-saving play in tracking down Miles Sanders on a long run. According to Next Gen Stats, Bond reached a top speed of 20.68 miles per hour to make a touchdown-saving tackle on Sanders. 5 plays later, the Eagles forced and recovered that fumble before the weather delay happened. Who was in on that forced fumble, you may ask? Jahad Campbell. Campbell and Byron Young, they made the tackle on Sanders as both caused for the ball to come out of his hands. And then obviously you see Quinyon Mitchell pick that up. Weather delay happens. Momentum is gone. But it didn't matter. The Eagles came out on top. Another pro, Dallas Goedert. He was everywhere. He finished with 7 catches for 44 yards. Obviously the stats don't really... I would say his stats tonight don't speak for what he showed. He led the team in receptions on the night. He was very, very, very good. He was everywhere he needed to be when they needed him to be. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I remember my betting lines. I said do not go over 4 receptions. I was absolutely wrong. I thought the pass game was going to be opened up just a little bit more than what it was, but that caused for Dallas Goedert to obviously lead the team in receptions, carry the load in terms of receiving on the night last night. That is what you get from Dallas Goedert, though. When the pass game isn't open like it should be, that is what you get. That is why Dallas Goedert is so valuable to this team. He is so important, and he did what he needed to do. I have 2 cons. One con we already talked about, but the first con, Kevin Patullo, offense coordinator. Everyone wants to blame Jalen Hurts for the A.J. Brown slump last night. Please stop. Please. Please learn football. That was all on Patullo. Absolutely. I'm not going to say Patullo called a terrible game because he didn't. He listen, the run plays, the checkdowns, things like that, they were good. But you have to call plays that will get your guy involved. I don't care if you're throwing A.J. Brown checkdowns, screen passes. Get him the damn ball. Absolutely. A.J. Brown had 1 catch for 8 yards. That came with 1:42 left in the 4th quarter. That cannot happen. I talked about it last episode. You've got to get A.J. Brown. You got to get Devontae Smith involved. Those are 2 guys that are key assets to this offense. You do not want what happened last year. Obviously, the animosity, the frustration, things like that. I mean, it turned out not to be super important. They won a Super Bowl, obviously, but you don't want to repeat that this year. Absolutely not. And quite frankly, you're not going to win games later on in the year not opening up your pass game. Like, you've got to take shots. You have to take shots, especially when you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Obviously, Devontae had a couple more receptions, things like that, whatever the case may be. But A.J. Brown had 0 targets until that last catch. 0. He has never had 0 targets in his career. Ever. So you have to open the field. You have to throw the ball down the field. Get him involved. Bottom line. My last con. We already talked about it. Secondary again, because fix it. Please fix it. One quick note. 2 CeeDee Lamb catches away from starting the season out 0-1. Luckily, he ate a Butterfinger during the weather delay. Had to have. Those 2 drops were so key for the Eagles to win that game last night. Absolutely. So that's my 10 cents, whatever you want to call it. Eagles start the season out 1-0. They travel to Arrowhead Stadium next week to face the Kansas City Chiefs, a Super Bowl rematch. As always, stay up to date with Eagles' latest on Fan Arch. Like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.